Hey everybody, this is Tony Hibbard with the Assisted Band Director, the channel that is here to help new and upcoming band directors on their journey and their venture through the band directing world. The video that I'm going to be doing today is the video that I've probably taken the most time making sure that all of my thoughts and everything are organized. But this is, what to do in an interview and what to do when preparing for an interview. So before I get started on this, if you have never heard of the podcast After Sectionals, this is their plug for it. It's a group of band directors in Texas, and they just kind of chronicle how they run band. But episode 135 is on interviews, and it is gold. So if you have not listened to them at all, that's a good place to start. But a lot of the stuff that I pulled, or that I'm putting in this video, I pulled from there, and then there's a couple other things that I've pulled from personal experience. But that episode is definitely one that everybody needs to listen to. All right, so here's your Interview 101 crash course. Okay, so as I've mentioned in my previous interviews, you always want to email the principal directly when you are trying to set up an interview. Send them an email. You can attach your cover letter and your resume, and that way they kind of get a general idea of who you are and what you do. And hopefully pretty quickly you'll get a reply back. Every job that I have applied for, I have emailed the principal directly. And I think that just helps get your name into the pool. For example, one of the jobs that I applied for fresh out of college, there were 26 applicants that they had picked. Now, I'm sure that they had more than 26 applications put in, but they had 26 people that they interviewed for that job. And that's in a very rural community in Tennessee. So depending on where you are, you may be in a large pool of band directors, and you have to find a way to make your name stick out. So emailing the principal directly is a great way to do that. Okay, so after they've replied and you have set up the interview, ask to see who all is going to be in the interview. I have been in interviews where it's just the principal. I've been in interviews where it's the head principal and like the athletic director, because it was for a high school job. So marching band has to work with the athletic director a lot. There was one school that I'll mention later in this interview, in this video, that it was a really, really small school. It was a K-12 school, and there were like 12 people in that interview. It was everything from school board members to principals to teachers. I mean, there were so many people in there. But see who all is going to be in there, because that will help mold how you're going to do your interview process. And of course, this goes without saying, make sure you arrive early. If you are traveling, give yourself plenty of time to get there. I had a job interview at a school once, and a snowstorm hit the night before. So I gave myself plenty of time to drive there, and they actually called me while I was on my way there to ask if I was still coming. And I told them they were, and they were pretty impressed with that. So always make sure that you give yourself plenty of time to get there if you are traveling. All right. So it's important to know how many people are going to be in the interview, because you want to bring a copy of everything for each person in that interview. And don't forget to include yourself in that. So if there's 5 people in there, you need to make sure that you have 5 resumes, 5 cover letters, and I've got some of the stuff down here to put in there. And I just realized that my pop-up screen is going to be blocking some of that. But I'll post a copy of this PowerPoint in the description below, so you guys can use it at your own leisure. And for me, I like having everything in a leather-bound portfolio. That looks a lot nicer than having a bunch of loose papers, and it works better than those manila folders or anything like that. It just helps look professional. So go to Walmart and get a $10 portfolio, especially if you've got a lot of job interviews lined up. Okay, something else that I did is each group. So if there's 5 people in it, I'm going to have 5 groups of all of my paperwork. I put them all in a binder clip, just one of the small ones, but I also picked school colors. So I went to Staples because they had a large array of colors to pick from. So, if school colors are red, white, and blue, get some red ones, get some blue ones, whatever. Just helps show that you're detail oriented. And have each group in the same order. So I always had my cover letter on top, the resume was right behind it, and then it kind of went from there. That way you can go, all right, if you turn to the second thing, that's my resume, and then everybody knows exactly where to turn to. I always printed everything on stock card. It's a little bit thicker than regular paper. And again, you're trying to make yourself stick out from the rest. So if you've got it looking nice and professional, that's just extra points for you. So I bought it was like a 50 pack of stock card or something. It was kind of expensive. It was probably $10 or something, but I used that for a lot of interviews. So I have the cover letter, resume. In Tennessee, we do praxis tests. I don't know if they do that in other states or not, but kind of your collegiate test scores. If you're a new teacher, try to get your transcript. I went over that in my Resume 101 video, I think. But you can make an unofficial transcript, and then what I did is I did a major transcript too. So I took all of my music classes and made a transcript out of that, and that kind of helped my GPA with that as well. Possible evaluation scores, from your college professor, whoever was in charge of that, and what's hiding behind this box that's got my lovely face on it is a philosophy of music education. That's something I had to do when I was in college. I don't remember what class it was for, but it just kind of, why you think music education is important. For a lot of schools, that may not be an issue, but for some schools that music's always on the chopping block, you need to have a defense for why your job is going to be important. And then down here at the bottom, I have nothing is worse than having to pass around your paperwork. So that interview that I had mentioned earlier that had like 12 people in it, I think that was my first job interview ever. If not, it was definitely, first or second. But I only brought one copy of everything. So all 12 of those people were like fighting over my paperwork to try to get, information and stuff like that. So it was not a good situation. It was definitely a big learning experience for me. But that's why it's important to have a copy for every person in there. And, if they say there's going to be 5 people in there, make sure you have the 6th one for you. You want to make sure that you have your stuff too. But I always have an extra one in there just in case somebody jumps in last minute. All right. The things I thought were common sense, but hearing stories, I'm going to go over this. What to wear and what not to wear. Okay. For men, you need to wear a suit and tie. And that's my personal opinion, but you want to dress for the job, you want to get. And if you come in khakis and a polo, in some communities that may work, but suit and tie is the way to go. And the tie, I always try to do school colors. The job that I currently have, when I was called back for my interview, I had just gotten a navy blue suit. I wore a white shirt and a red tie because their school colors are red, white, and blue. So as soon as the principal came out and got me, he said, all right, Avery Trace colors. All right. So good first impression. And again, that's going back to being detail oriented. It's the little things like that. And you want to make all those connections. Women, I'm always uncomfortable talking about this. Something professional and something comfortable, you may be sitting at a table, you may not be sitting at a table. And if, just be prepared for all situations. If your shoes require it, make sure they are shined. Okay, that's mostly for gentlemen, but it can also apply to women as well. Because again, you want to be detail oriented. And your belt and shoes need to match. If you have on a black belt, you need to have black shoes and black socks. Okay, if you have on a brown belt, you need to have brown shoes and brown socks. One one of the jobs I interviewed, I was in my suit and tie, and they said, "Well, you're dressed a lot better than the previous person. He was in jeans." So come to school or come to an interview wearing jeans. No. And again, I've said this a lot: be detail oriented, no wrinkles, and it doesn't need to look worn out. Okay, I know as music majors we have to get that tuxedo or whatever for our performances, but if it's worn out, you need to get a new one. Go to Goodwill, go wherever, but you need to look sharp for this interview, because first impressions mean everything. Okay, and also for those of you that are fresh out of college, and you're going for a high school gig, you're only going to be 4 or 5 years older than the seniors in that school. So my personal opinion, you need to be dressing professionally, because you need to separate yourself from them. If you don't dress as professionally and you're more casual, that can kind of send the wrong message for how your position is. And again, if you're an experienced band director and you have stuff to add in, this is the place to do it. Comment below on experiences that you have had that were good or bad, because we're all just here trying to help the next group of band directors coming out. Okay, so I think this is the last slide. Nope. School research. Okay, it is important that you find out as much about the school and, if possible, the administration as you can. You want to know, do they have band? Do they have choir? Do they, as much information as you can. The school that I work at currently is an IB school. Okay, so there's a whole different mindset for schools that have the IB program. So I tried to find out as much stuff as I could about the philosophy of an IB school. And, I put that in the handbook that I made. And I think that showed the administration that I was serious about this job. And it wasn't just, I'm trying to find a new job and here's what's available. So try to find out as much as you can about the school. You can do that through the leaving band director, if that's possible, or you can find a lot of information out just by checking the school website and check, see if they have a Facebook page or an Instagram page, and you can find a lot of information about schools using those avenues. What is the school focus? My previous job, the director of schools really pushed literacy for everything. So if a school system is really bent on pushing literacy, how are you going to help literacy in a band program? Because we don't have textbooks, we don't read words per se, so you've got to find a way to make that work. You can find previous band handbooks that'll tell you kind of how the band program was structured before you get there. Info about feeder schools. Again, going to another interview in my beginning years, I asked, one of the questions the principal asked me was, how am I going to grow the band program? And I said, well, you have to grow it through the feeder schools. And then I asked the question, how many feeder schools do you have, or what schools feed into here? And she looked me dead in the eyes and goes, I don't know. Why don't you tell me? So it was that was kind of a wake up moment. So try to see if you can find out information about that before you get in there, so you don't have a moment like I do, or like I did. Program size, if you are applying for a band position and you think it's a 30-person program, and then you get in there and it's 250, that can be a problem. So kind of see what the band program's like. See if there is a choir teacher as well, because my first job I had to teach band and choir, and I did not enjoy teaching choir. Relationships with departments, athletics. This one's kind of harder to figure out. If you know the band director that's leaving, or you have contact with them, this is one way to reach out with that. If the fine arts department is a really tight knit group, you probably need to try to find out some information about the others in that department. See if the band and the football coach have a good relationship, or the band and the basketball coach. See if they have a booster program and see what the relationship is with that. I've taken over a band program where the boosters did not, I'm trying to think how to put this politically correct. The boosters did not always see eye to eye with the previous band director, which was good to know going into it because the principal gave me a heads up with that, but I did not know that going into the interview. So that was a challenge right from the beginning that I had to take care of. And this is one of the nuggets that I took from the After Sectionals podcast that I plugged at the beginning, is you are applying to join the school, not just to be the band director. You have to appeal to the principal first. Okay. You have to have the mindset of how are you going to fit in with the school, not, I'm going to be the band director and all I worry about is the band. That's not a good mindset to have. You are applying to join, the family of whatever school it is. And how are you going to fit in with that through the avenue of band? So just something to think about. You can't just talk band. You have to talk about, one of the things that I did in my last interview was setting goals for students. Like how did I do that? And I did it through practice records. They had to set a goal for each week. I didn't do how many minutes did you practice? I had them set up, what's your goal for this week? How are you going to reach this goal? And it was, the smart goal setup. And I can post that in the link below too. But I think once I started talking about that and how the students were kind of in control of their goals, and I think that helped with me getting this job. All right, so this is the last one. Yep. So questions. The big one not to ask is about pay. You can go on the district website and find that out. It's posted on every single district website. If it's not for whatever reason, check the state website. All that stuff is public domain. Don't ask that in an interview. But you need to prepare for some questions. One question that you're going to get is, tell us a little bit about yourself. Okay, legally, they can't ask you if you're married. They can't ask you if you have kids. They can't really ask you many personal things like that. But you can say that, or you can say what you want, or withhold what you want during that question. And more than likely, that's going to be the first question that's asked. So definitely have that prepared. And also have some questions of your own, because at the end, they'll always say, well, do you have any questions for us? So have something ready. See if the job fits you. You may not want the job. Again, going back to, I think I applied for like 13 jobs the summer after I graduated, and I had 5 or 6 interviews and I didn't get any of them, which I'll come back to that in just a minute. But one of the jobs that I did get an interview for was for, it was just a general music position, and it was going between 6 K-8 schools, and they had 6-week grading periods. So I would spend 6 weeks at this school, then 6 weeks at the next school, then 6 weeks at the next school, throughout the year. So I'd hit I'd hit all 6 schools throughout the year, and then the next year I'd start it back over. So I asked if there was, a music room at each school, and they said no. And I asked if there was any equipment at any of the schools, and they said, I think there's one piano at one of the schools. So once I was finished with that job, I knew even if they offered it to me, I was not going to take that job. It was about an hour commute for that job too. So don't accept a job just for a job. You want to make sure that you are going to enjoy the job, or that it's even manageable for you. So, and you may not want the job. Have your strengths and weaknesses prepared. A lot of people have a hard time for their weaknesses. I'm one of those people. But one of the things that you can say is, I really struggled with this before, and this is how I'm working on fixing it, or this is how I have fixed it. It's kind of an easier way to get into that without going, I'm not really good at classroom management. You don't want to say that. What are you comfortable teaching? Okay, this is more for band directors that have taught before. One of the big, huge adjustments for me going from my previous job to this job is I taught a high school program of about 30 to 40 people. And then I took over a middle school program that had 30 or 40 people per grade. So it was a big, huge numbers jump for me. And then how are you going to handle that? Okay, another job that I had applied for was a high school program of, 150 plus. And one of the questions was, well, you're used to only teaching 30 people at a time. So how are you going to handle, now teaching a band of 150 versus 30? And you may have 150 kids in one room and it's just you. So how are you going to handle that kind of classroom management? Those are answers that you need to have prepared going into that. And then these last two are probably ones that are gonna come up. Why should we hire you? So what makes you stick out from the rest? And then why do you want this job? And if this is another nugget from that After Sectionals podcast, don't say because it's closer to home. I commuted for 45 minutes for the first 7 years of my teaching career. I now drive a mile to my school, but I did not mention that it was closer. I mean, that is a huge perk, but that's not why I wanted that job, was because it's closer to home. And again, I'm kind of, doing a rough overview of all this, but seriously, go watch that podcast or go listen to that podcast, because they go into great detail about a lot of stuff that's really, really good. And most of it's applicable to anybody, whether it's you're in a city school, rural school, middle of nowhere school. That stuff all works for everything. So that's this. This kind of a longer video than I anticipated it being, but I wanted to be very thorough, and because I think this is probably the most stressful part of getting your first job. When I went through college, I had no experience with interviews. I never had an interview until it was my first interview. So I'm trying to do everything I can to prepare my student teachers for that first interview. And if you're currently getting interviews now, congratulations, that's awesome. Don't start getting discouraged when you start getting rejection letters, because the hardest thing to do is to get that first job, because a lot of principals don't want to break in a new teacher, and that's kind of their discretion, because being a new teacher, you learn a lot of stuff in that first year. So just keep trying, keep applying, keep getting those interviews, and don't give up. One thing I did forget to put in here is, after you have finished your interview, when you get home the same day, you need to send a thank you email to that principal, and if other principals are in there, send them to the other principals as well, thanking them for interviewing you. I know the old school way was to send like an actual thank you card through the mail, but a lot of times the turnaround's really quick. My first job, I was interviewed at like 10 o'clock in the morning, and they offered it to me at 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So there was no way a thank you letter was going to get there before they made that decision. So send a quick email, say thank you, hopefully we can work together in the future, whatever. Because if it's down to you and another person, and there's almost, no difference between the two, that might be just the little bit that pushes you over. So if there's any questions that you do have that I missed in this, and I know I threw a lot of information, but I'm sure I missed all kinds of stuff too. Please comment in the section below, and I will answer any questions I can. If you are wrapping up your student teaching, try to see if the school that you are working at will give you a mock interview. I'm trying to set that up for my current student teacher. I think that will really, really prepare you for your first interview if you know the first one isn't for an actual job, and you can kind of get a test run. So that is all for this one. If you have made it this far, thank you so much. If you have not